Today we're going to be taking a look at the Zozo Fit body tracking suit. This thing looks like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, but what it does is it tracks your body measurements and it also tracks your body fat estimated based off of those measurements. So it should be a nice, easy, fast, convenient way to track your progress if you're on a fitness journey, whether that be a muscle growth journey, so you're wanting to see, are my biceps getting bigger, or if you're on a fat loss journey. So this could be a really useful tool if it does what it claims. And the reason why I was actually interested and reached out to ZozoFit to see if they would be interested in me doing a review is because for me, I find that taking a whole bunch of measurements, by the time you take your chest and your shoulders and your neck and your biceps and your forearms and your stomach and your glutes and your quads and your calves, all those different measurements, it just takes a long time. I'm a super busy guy, and quite honestly, I forget a lot of times. Or, I'll remember, but I'm busy doing something else. And so I just end up not doing it. I'll get my once a week waist measurement, I'll do my body weight, and that's about it. So this may solve my problem to allow me to more consistently track my progress. I want to put this thing through its paces in this video and test a few different things. First of all, I want to do 2 measurements back to back. And that way I can see how precise is this suit and the app from measurement to measurement. Because if it's off from measurement to measurement, then obviously it's not going to do you very good tracking your results, because you won't be able to rely on its accuracy from one result to another result. 2, I want to take my good old tape measurement here and do all of my measurements that way to see how this compares to the tape measurements. And 3, I want to actually time how long it takes to do the suit measurement versus tape measurements to see how much time it actually saves and see if it's something that I feel like I'm actually going to stick with. And then I'll give my final verdict at the end. Let's hop into the first test and see how accurate this thing is from measurement to measurement. I already have one measurement because I did one as a part of the setup process. And so we'll take the second measurement and compare that against the first measurement. For the first test, we already have something a little bit interesting. From test number 1 to test number 2, which were only a few minutes apart, there was a 3 percentage point difference in my body fat levels. Now, one thing that I will say is if you go over to the color metric and you look at the change from the last scan to this scan, you'll see that my lower waist was down 1.9 centimeters and my upper waist was down 1.4 centimeters. And it could be, perhaps, that I was potentially subconsciously standing slightly different, and maybe I was standing slightly more upright. Maybe I was slouching a little bit in the first one without realizing it, and I was more upright in the second one, and so that brought my stomach in, and because my stomach was in, that changed the estimation of the body fat, which that's one thing that I will tell my clients when they're doing their waist measurements, for me, to be mindful of how you're standing and then how you have your waist tape and all that other kind of stuff to make sure that the measurements are as accurate as possible from one measurement to the next. And so this may or may not be the fault of the Zozo Fit app, but it is worth noting because that is quite a bit of a difference. The second one is a lot closer to what my actual body fat is according to the Renfo scale. I did a review on the Renfo scale a few years back, and based on my experience with caliper measurements and looking at charts online and different forms of measurements, the Renfo scale for me is pretty accurate to what my body fat actually is. And this morning when I stepped on the Renfo scale, it said that I was 14.6% body fat. So 14.6 and 15%, pretty close to each other. So I think maybe I was slouching a little bit in the first one, and that might account for the difference here. So body fat, pretty spot on. So I'm pleased to see that, and I'll give it a little bit of a pass on the body fat because I do think, just thinking back to my first scan, I do think maybe I was slouching just a little bit. Next, let's do some tape measurements so that we can compare both the accuracy of the suit versus the tape and the time that it takes for the suit versus the tape. One thing that actually is a benefit for the suit versus the tape is some measurements are a bit difficult to get by yourself, whereas you can easily get all of your measurements by yourself with the suit. So that's a point for the Zozosuit. We have the tape measurements done, and I can already confidently tell you that the third test of how much of a time difference is there, does this save you time versus tape measurements, this absolutely saves time versus tape measurements. It took me about 10 minutes. I'll have to get the final timestamp when editing the video, but it was about 10 minutes to do the tape measurements, and it, I think, was a little bit less than 2 minutes to do the scan. Now, of course, you have to factor in the time that it takes to put the suit on, but we're talking like a minute tops to put the suit on and take it back off. So about 3 minutes versus 10 minutes to take the tape measurements. But let's get into the differences between my manual measurements and the suit's measurements. So looking at the neck and working our way down, the neck measurement with the suit is 15.4 inches. I got 14.5 inches. Zozo's shoulder measurement was 18.7 inches. Mine was 17.5. But to be honest, between my measurements, doing them on myself across the back of my shoulders versus their measurements, I'm inclined to believe the app versus what I have wrote down here on paper. And then same thing with the chest. It's hard to do the chest measurement by yourself. And so for the chest measurement, they have 40.9 inches. I have 39.75 inches. Right arm, they have 14 inches. I have 13 inches. Left arm, they have 13.8. I have 13.5. Lower waist, they have 33. I have 34. Upper waist, they have 33.1. I have 32.75. Left thigh, they have 25.7. I have 24.5. Right thigh, they have 25.5, and I have 24.25. Left calf, they have 15.5. I have 15.75. And then right calf, they have 15.8, and I have 16. So with all these measurements, they're relatively close. And some of these measurements, as I've already mentioned, are hard to take by yourself. And so I'm inclined to believe them over my manual measurements where I'm holding the tape up here like this and trying to relax my chest, but get the tape measurement in the right place at the all that kind of good stuff. So with all that being said, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to say that this suit was a good idea at the beginning of this video from an accuracy standpoint, but after having done all the measurements, I feel pretty confident with the suit. I feel more confident in the suit than I feel in myself taking my own measurement. And so if I want to get accurate measurements, it's either do it by myself with the suit, which is obviously faster and more convenient, or make my wife do it, and that's of course less convenient to get someone else to do your measurements. Now the only drawback with this suit is the fact that it does cost $200, but you do get lifetime access to the app, of course, along with that. And the other drawback is there are specific suits based on specific weights. For me, at 6 foot, 193 pounds, I'm using the Yaya suit. But the bottom cutoff for the Yaya suit is 192 pounds. So if I go into a cutting phase and I drop 2 pounds, then I would need the Roro suit. Now I'm sure there is some overlap here. If I drop down into the upper 180s when I go into a cut, or even mid 180s when I go into a cut, I'm sure this suit will still work. But if you're on a larger fat loss journey and you need to lose 30, 40, 50 pounds, you might run into a situation where you have to buy multiple suits across that journey. So that is something to keep in mind to judge for yourself if this suit is worth the money, or suits, plural, would be worth the money for your situation. Now what I can say for me is it would be worth it for me. And I'm going to continue using this suit, and I'll probably be back in the future with a longer term review after I go the rest of the way through this bulking phase and into a cutting phase and can see the measurements tracked over time and see how I continue to like this suit, or maybe not like this suit, as I use it more. So we'll see on that. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that update. As always, God bless you and your family, and we'll see you next week. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Zozo Fit suit. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Zozo Fit body tracking suit. It's something to track come on, man.